Hello everybody, Mannix here. Going to be doing a knife review on sort of a blast from the past. It's not that old, but it's not really talked about as much anymore. But I still think it's really cool and very innovative, the Cold Steel Pocket Bushman. Now basically this is a knife that has a very, 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 very strong locking mechanism on it. It's extremely strong. One of, if not the strongest locking mechanism in the world, I would say. Yes, I would even argue that. Some people may argue against that, but I don't. Unless you're talking about a multi-handled knife like the Balisong or the Pantographic style folder. If you're talking about single-handle folders, I'm going to say Ram SafeLock is the strongest locking mechanism in the world. And I'm going to roll in a video of me talking about how the locking mechanism works, because I already made a video on that. Let's start with the specs. Cold Steel's website says the weight is 6.6 ounces, so it's on the heavier side. It is a big, long knife. The blade is 4.5 inches long, flat ground. It's got stonewash finish on there, very nicely done. And it happens to be a 4116, what they call cryo-quenched blade steel. And in my research, it performs similar to Buck's 420 HC. It's a very good blade steel for the money. Handle length, 5.75 inches, making the overall length 10.25 inches. Handle happens to be one single piece of steel that's rolled over. As you can see, it's not multiple slabs screwed together. It's literally just one piece of steel. Also contributes to its strength, you could say, of 420 stainless steel, very commonly used for handle materials. It is tip-up carry. They have their simple pocket clip right here, which I like. They use this on their Tough Lights, I know. It is swappable to the left side. We do have dual thumb studs, but it's this wonky kind where it's lopsided. You can rotate it if you clamp down this side of the thumb stud with a pair of pliers and then flathead screwdriver, you can swap it. I don't know why they don't just give you dual thumb studs to begin with, but oh well. It is fully ambidextrous knife, and the locking mechanism is as well. So let me roll in the video of me talking how the locking mechanism works. The Cold Steel Ram SafeLock. This is a lock mechanism designed by Cold Steel. I believe Andrew Demko specifically designed it. It is one of the strongest locking mechanisms in the world. Now, Cold Steel is already known for their Triad lock, which is also one of the strongest locking mechanisms in the world. But this, I would argue, I haven't seen too many head-to-head tests, but I would argue it is a little bit stronger than that, if not just flat out stronger. This is how it works, essentially. Because of this one solid piece of metal that the handle is made of, there's no way you could make a lockback style knife like the Triad lock for this. So they came up with this Ram SafeLock right here, which is one long piece of metal. It extends across the entire length of the handle pretty much. It begins here. It's this piece that's stonewashed, as you can see, with the lanyard attached to it. And there's a torsion spring inside of the mechanism. I can't show you it, but there is a spring inside of there, which is constantly putting pressure on this mechanism to move forward, to move this way. So when you release it, there's a lot of pressure on there. It's really a slow knife. I haven't tightened down pretty tight too, but basically it wedges itself in between the spine of the handle and the roof right here, the notch, the cutout you can see right there, of the tang of the blade. Once the space is freed up, it just shoves itself in there, and you have a whole bar taking up the entire length of the tang right here. This whole piece is occupied by that locking mechanism. All that right there. That's a lot of space. So positive force, that is force going on the edge, gets transferred to the very end of the mechanism. Basically, it just gets transferred to that, and then it gets transferred all across this entire bar right here. So you need to smack this extreme... You need so much force in order to somehow disengage, just actually push this back, because that is a lot of metal and a lot of pressure. It's even hard to do it manually, to pull that back. And then the negative force, that's when force goes on the spine of the blade. Basically, that's usually an accident when you smack it against something. The force gets transferred to the bar, which again is wedged in between the tang and the roof of the handle, and then to the steel handle. There's three pieces of metal working together in this small little space right here, and it's this big old bar with a lot of pressure being forced on it. It's just extremely strong. Extremely strong locking mechanism. Now, why they don't have more knives like this, why more knives do not use the Ram SafeLock, well, there are disadvantages to it. One thing is safety. If you use common sense and you don't slip or anything, you'll be fine, but it clamps down on you. It snaps pretty tight. It's not like a huge snap, but it does snap. You would get cut pretty bad if your fingers happen to be in there. Because again, there's so much pressure because of the torsion spring on there. It's also very slow. You cannot, for the love of God, you cannot flick this thing open. It must be opened conventionally. However, if you pull on the lanyard right here and open it, that will relieve some of the pressure manually, and then that makes it a little bit easier to open up. Actually makes it very easy to open up. Another downside is, since this knife happens to be all made of metal, it's slick. So if your hands are starting to sweat, like mine are actually sweating right now, I'm starting to slip, try to close this knife, just showing you in this video, that could be another way it could cut you. So be very careful. Wear gloves as you're going to use this knife. You can it is serrated right here, so you can disengage it without the lanyard, but don't even try it. It is so painful. I'm not even going to... No, I can't. You technically can. Eventually, and this is pretty new. I haven't used this knife that much yet, so that could be part of it. Over time, it might loosen up on you. As a last ditch, you can use your fingers technically, but this get a lanyard on there. It comes with a lanyard, so there's videos of people batoning with these things. I don't think you can even successfully baton with a triad lock. I think eventually those things may fail on you, but this just has so much more force, and it is slower. That is a disadvantage, but it is a lot more powerful. So what is the point of the locking mechanism? Basically, if you want a bushcraft knife, you want a knife that you can baton with and do really hard woods work with, but you want it to also fit in your pocket, you don't want to carry a sheath or anything, this is good for that. However, I would just recommend getting a fixed blade anyway, because technically it's still a locking mechanism. Back in the day, these would fail. Sometimes people would show footage of the locking mechanism goofing up, but that was back in the day. Cold Steel updated it since then, and since that moment I have not seen it fail. Basically just really strong, interesting, slow, but awesome locking mechanism. Okay, wasn't that fun? So basically we have an extremely strong locking mechanism right here. It's a slow knife to deploy, especially if you don't manually pull it back as you are deploying it. It's pretty slow. It's not like really slow or anything, but you cannot flick. Do not even attempt to flick this knife. It's dangerous because it snaps back on you. This is just so much force, but that slowness of it contributes to its strength. There's just a lot of pressure. There's a lot of torque. There's a very powerful spring in there, much more powerful than most torsion bars that you see on most locking mechanisms, including the Cold Steel Triad lock. That's this guy right here. Is an old Recon 1. This is also a very, very strong locking mechanism. Extremely strong. But I would say it's not quite as strong as this guy right here. There's people batoning with this thing. As I said, it's just insane. I would not baton with any folding knife, but this one has not failed on people in those videos. So if you want to baton with a folding knife, this is the one to do it with. But again, the disadvantage is the slowness. So it is not, I would not carry this around in the city or the suburbs or your job. I would just keep this in your house and use it, go outside when you're going to be doing some woodwork, or keep it on your person as a makeshift woodsman's knife, bushcrafting knife to cutting logs in half, stuff like that. Fixed blades are always the go-to for that style work, but if you want to keep a backup on you, you want to keep something in your pocket, this is perfect for that, hence the Pocket Bushman. Very aptly named knife right here. So very interesting. Oh yeah, price. I didn't even say the price actually. Sorry, it retails at I think $44.99, but you can get these all day long, $26 online. $26 is an excellent price. This is the strongest knife in the world for $26 as far as folding knives go. Unless, of course, you count Balisongs. Those are, I think, I would argue those are even stronger because you have multiple handles pinching them together. But as far as single-handle knives go, the strongest out there, I'm going to say. Now, Cold Steel did a video where they showed how much pressure. I think it was up to 250 pounds of weight clamped onto the handle right here as the blade was stuck into something else, and it was still holding. It was starting to bend a little bit, but it was still working. But they've showed footage of one of their knives, the Triad lock, holding up to about 720 pounds, I think. And it was starting to bend, but it was still working. So as far as putting weight on the handle when the blade is inside something as the locking mechanism is engaged, looks like the Triad lock was stronger than the Ram Safe lock, but the thing is that's not everything. There's also positive shock tests, negative shock tests that they do. I'm curious to see the Pocket Bushman go head-to-head with any of their Triad lock knives. I would like to see a comparison between the Ram Safe lock and the Triad lock. I have not yet seen anything like that. I would like Cold Steel to do that. But as far as I know, it is stronger. Overall, I would say it is stronger than the Triad lock simply because it's just one giant bar. It's so simple, one giant bar with a ton of pressure just sandwiched in between the tang and the single piece of steel that happens to be the handle. Like the big old finger choil right here, it's fairly comfortable for it. It's not really comfortable. It's pretty sharp right here for your hands. It's long. You have a lot of reach to work with. Once it's open and deployed, it's really strong. It would make a good defense knife, I guess, if you had it already deployed. But again, I do not recommend this for defense. I do not recommend this for EDC. It's long. It's cumbersome. It is on the slim side. It is smooth. I like that. But overall, it's just not as comfortable and not quite as good as other knives out there. It doesn't look like you have a huge knife if you do carry it. I have been carrying this around town just for the sake of a review. It carries really nicely. I've had no problems with it. Kind of heavy, but not too bad. This very interesting knife. If you got the money and you want it, go get it.